Well, good morning. It's good to be with you this morning as we continue together in our time in Luke. Hope you are well and all is good for you as we continue unpacking God's Word together. Today we're going to read another one of Jesus' healing miracles in Luke. We'll be reading Luke chapter 18, verses 35 through 43. Basically, be reading through the end of the chapter. Luke, um, Luke 18, 35 through 43. As he approached Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard a crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. Then he shouted, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Those who were in front sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he shouted even more loudly, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stood still in order that the man be brought to him. When he came near, he asked him, What do you want me to do? He said, Lord, let me see again. Jesus said to him, Receive your sight. Your faith has saved you. Immediately he regained his sight and followed him, glorifying God, and all the people, when they saw it, praised God. So this is one of the stories of Jesus healing sight. One of the things I do like when we speak about Jesus healing the blind is you see this a lot in John's gospel, but I think it's true across all the gospels, is to understand that when we see Jesus healing the blind or restoring sight, that the sight that Jesus restores is not just physical sight, but the fact that Jesus is always restoring spiritual sight. So it isn't just that he helps us see things spiritually. I'm sorry, physically. He restores sight physically, but he is also restoring spiritual sight. He helps us see. And so one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is how how do we see? Are we truly seeing what Jesus would have us to see? Are we truly having our sight restored? I heard it put like this. I think this is C.S. Lewis. I feel like it's Lewis. It may not be Lewis, but I feel like this is a Lewis quote where it's been told that faith enlivens the eyes. That is faith that allows us to truly and actually see. So when Jesus heals this man, yes, he's healing his physical sight, but Jesus is always in the spiritual sight healing. Because we see not with the eyes, the physical eyes alone, we see with spiritual eyes. For there's a spiritual reality all around us. Not just in terms of good and evil, things such as spiritual warfare, which is a biblical reality, but also in the notion of do we see the deeper things? Do we see the deeper things? Are you seeing the deeper things in your life? So often it's easy to see inconveniences. So often we get so busy with life. I think about how as I've gotten older, I was I was eating lunch recently with a pastor that I respect, and we were talking about how as we preach longer and have more experiences, how little I used to know. You know, when I was younger, I felt like I knew so much, and I look back now and I knew so little. And now I hope I've learned something, and I understand how little I do know. I wish I had had more grace, more patience when my children were younger. I wish I had not been so. One of my great regrets in life is that I feel like I was too tightly wound when my kids were young, that I didn't just enjoy life with them. I wish I'd done more of that. I was too focused on other things that I didn't. I beat myself up. I think I was probably a decent dad. I hope they would say so. But I always felt like I was so stressed out. I was so stressed out. And I wish now, looking back, that I had not been so stressed out, that I could have allowed some of the stresses of life and ministry to have stayed at church or stayed wherever and not taken home and worried so much. But I'm a worrier. I don't beat myself up over this, but I also think that I couldn't see then. I was too immature. I didn't have the wisdom that comes from sight. Uh, Not physical sight, the spiritual sight. I wish I could have seen more then, but I wasn't ready to see. And I don't know that I had the maturity to see at that moment. Not that I do now. Once again, I'm still now I'm aware of how little I see. So Jesus healed this man's sight. The same way that he longs to heal our sight. He longs to help us see, not just physically, but spiritually, to understand the spiritual realities of what is going on all around us, to understand the spiritual realities of what's happening in our lives and our families. If we will give ourselves the grace to stop for just a moment and look and see and understand. This blind beggar asked Jesus to help him see, and he did. And I think that's another thing that we take away from this is that he shouted, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Those who were in front sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he shouted even more loudly, Son of David, have mercy on me. He shouted even more loudly. He did not let the roadblocks he ran into, he did not let the troubles he faced, he did not let the trials that he dealt with, he did not let the criticisms of others. When they said, "Hush, don't bother Jesus," it is interesting. Sometimes when you read the Gospels, it seems like the disciples are more like bouncers. How often did they say, "Do not trouble the teacher. Leave him alone. Don't bother him." It seemed like the disciples were always saying, "Don't bother him. Don't bother him." But this one said, "No." He shouted more loudly. And Jesus said, "What do you want me to do? Let me see again. Receive your sight. Your faith has healed you." Jesus heard his cries. Jesus heard his pleas for sight. And Jesus honored them and healed him. Our cries do not fall upon deaf ears. Jesus hears. He does. He hears our cries. He hears our pleas. He hears our hurts, our wounds, our needs. Jesus hears. And sometimes we can think, well, does he really hear them? Does he really hear what I'm crying? Does he really hear what I'm asking for? Does he really hear what I'm saying? And he does. I never forget what somebody asked one time. Said, the preacher said, how come I keep praying for these things? They never happen. It was somebody praying for their child. How come I keep praying and nothing's happening? Nothing's happening. They keep doing what they're going to do, and you know, I keep praying and nothing's changing. And that's one of the things I think with prayer is that we only see the times when our prayers did not work the way that we want them to. But if you're praying for your child and you don't feel like your child maybe has gotten to the point in their faith or their life where they need to be, well, if you consider that what might have happened to them if you hadn't been praying, if you're praying for your spouse and they're not, maybe are praying for a friend or someone who doesn't know the Lord, and it's easy to get frustrated because they haven't come to know the Lord yet. Have you considered what might have happened if you hadn't been praying for them? Imagine what would be happening in the world in certain places. Imagine what would be happening in our work, in our job, in our nation if we have not been praying. Sure, things may not be like we want them to be, and things may not be exactly as we wish they were, but imagine what may have happened if we hadn't been praying. So keep praying. Keep praying. And we may be like the blind beggar, and we may feel like our prayers aren't mattering, that God doesn't hear them, that they're bouncing off the ceiling, that God is ignoring them, that people are telling us that we're foolish for praying these things. Keep praying. Keep praying. Keep taking your requests to God. Keep asking God to help because He does hear and He does help and He does heal. He healed today this man that was blind. Jesus brought sight and helped him to see. The same way He will do the same for us. So keep praying, keep asking, keep shouting, and know that through God's grace, we can have the grace to truly see what matters, to truly see what happens. That His faith, His grace will help our faith, and our faith will enliven our eyes. So may we have eyes to see and ears to hear and hands to serve, no matter where it is that Jesus has called us to. So, hey, keep praying. and see what God will do. Hey, thanks for being with us today. Have a great rest of your day.